Daleks Master Plan, the fourth serial of Doctor Who's third season, first broadcast in 12 parts from the 13th of November 1965 to the 29th of January 1966, and written by Terry Nation and Dennis Spooner. Now, normally when I'm reviewing classic Doctor Who, specifically from William Hartnell or Patrick Troughton's era, which does still have a few stories missing, I would normally wait until the entire story has been either found or recreated in animation before I do a proper review of it. The only reason I'm slightly going against the grain this time is because the Daleks Master Plan is largely still missing. 5 of the 7 episodes currently exist, with 2 having been recently found, those being Episode 1, The Nightmare Begins, and Episode 3, Devil's Planet. Previously, I was going to wait until this had been released on home media, DVD and the like, but as it seems that two episodes have been recently found and they're not doing an animation for it, the remaining missing episodes quite yet, I thought I'd review what they've got, or what we have so far remaining of this story. As I said, this is a 12-part story and only 5 episodes currently remain. Those being Episode 1, The Nightmare Begins, Episode 2, Day of Armageddon, Episode 3, Devil's Planet, Episode 5, Counterplot, and Episode 10, Escape Switch. The entire story went The Nightmare Begins, Day of Armageddon, Devil's Planet, The Traitors, Counterplot, Coronas of the Sun, The Feast of Stephen, Volcano, Golden Death, Escape Switch, The Abandoned Planet, and Destruction of Time. But, anyway, onto the story itself. The first Doctor, well, the TARDIS lands on the planet Kemble, and the first Doctor, played by William Hartnell, sets out to find medical help for his companion Stephen Taylor, played by Peter Purves, who, following on from the previous Doctor Who story, The Mythmakers, which is also currently missing, Stephen Taylor has been injured, so the Doctor leaves him in the care of his other companion, former Trojan handmaiden Katerina, played by Adrian Hill, in order to find help. In the process of exploring Kemble, the Doctor ends up running across a space security agent named Brett Villon, played by Doctor Who favourite Nicholas Courtney. Now, Nicholas Courtney, his character ultimately ends up dying in this story. Like, I'm sorry, spoiler alert, I'm getting this out of the way. There's a lot of death in this particular story. And I do like to think that they got in Nicholas Courtney for this story and then they thought, if we had fun working with you, how would you like to come back and play a main character? Yeah, sure, why not? He ends up encountering Brett Villon, but also discovers that things are afoot. Namely, that on the planet Kemble there are Daleks, and they have seemingly allied themselves with the Guardian of the Solar System, Mavic Chen, played by Kevin Stoney. He has provided them with a small core of an element called terranium. And what the Daleks plan to do with the terranium is use it to fuel their latest weapon, a time destructor, which will basically accelerate a planet's time stream until it eventually just dies. That way they can use it to kind of gain more power in the solar system and basically take over all of the universe. With Mavic Chen mainly there to gain more power for himself. So the Doctor has to find a way to ultimately stop the Daleks, gather the terranium, and ultimately save the entire planet from the Daleks Master Plan. Now, as I said, there's a lot of death in this story. As I mentioned, Brett Villon ends up sadly dying during the course of this story, although that's not actually shown in the 5 episodes that currently exist in the story. So I do know he died later on because they do mention it. In fact, he's actually shot by his sister, actually, I don't know if it's his sister, I think it's his sister, but a relative of his named Sarah Kingdom, played by Jean Marsh. She is another short-term companion for the Doctor, because while I don't see it in the 5 episodes, because I believe her death happens in episode 4, The Traitors, but Katerina ends up dying during this story as well. While the Daleks, of course, have to meet their death in this story, the 3 big deaths that the Doctor mentions by the end of the story are Brett Villon, Katerina, and Sarah Kingdom, with Brett being killed by Sarah. Katerina, in episode 4, apparently, she, somewhat a traitor, a member of the planet they're on, sneaks onto their ship and simply takes her hostage. So she ends up blowing herself and him out of an airlock in order to gain Doctor and Stephen more time, to which Stephen apparently says something along the lines of, well, surely it must be an accident, because she didn't know what she was doing. And I went, no, she knew what she was doing. And she did it to save us, to gain us time. Which is a sad thing to think about. Yeah, as I said, Brett ends up being shot or killed by Sarah. Katerina ends up kind of releasing herself and the man out of an airlock, and then at the end of the story, apparently when they finally end up partially activating the time destructor device, Sarah ends up rapidly aging to death, or at least that's what I read. Because of the 5 episodes that do exist of this story, I viewed them just out of curiosity, and they're a good story, but the 5 episodes on their own, without the other ones in between and afterwards, they don't really make a lot of sense. The Nightmare Begins and Day of Armageddon mainly centre around the Doctor trying to kind of get the Terranium core back from the Daleks and Mavic Chen and ultimately stop their evil plan. And as I said, that covers the first 3 episodes. Counterplot mainly sees them arriving on the planet Myra, where they're surrounded by Daleks and have to find their way out. And then the final episode that does still exist is episode 10, Escape Switched, which that's a big jump, because in this story they're in ancient Egypt, and they end up encountering another Doctor Who classic villain, the Monk, played once again by Peter Butterworth, who has seemingly allied himself with the Daleks just to kind of cause chaos, with the Doctor stealing part of the Monk's TARDIS to replace his own, and also reconfiguring the Monk's chameleon circuit so it now appears as the Doctor's TARDIS, i.e. a blue police box, just so the Daleks will chase after him. Now, the one last thing I would like to say about this story is there's one moment in one of the missing episodes that apparently did gain quite a bit of criticism. It comes at the end of episode 7, I think, The Feast of Stephen, as it apparently showed, going towards the end of the episode, the Doctor mentioning that it's Christmas. Like, the time they landed in, they were celebrating Christmas. So he raises a glass of champagne and also ends up breaking the 4th wall and talking directly to the audiences at home, telling them, because it was Christmas 1965, for all of them to have a very Merry Christmas. Now, well, I think that's a very nice, kind of touching subject. Apparently it drew a bit of criticism, just like people felt it was rather out of character, but hey, I mean, technically this was Doctor Who's first kind of Christmas special, so I will mention of that. So until they end up releasing a full version of the Daleks Master Plan, either in animation or kind of they managed to find the missing episodes, this is my quick review of it. Now, I do know they did release an audiobook version of it, or kind of the audio recordings of the episode, so that is still available. We do have that, but until then, until they find a suitable visual media for it, that's my quick little review of the Daleks Master Plan. I hope they find the rest of it someday, or recreate it, because it does seem like a fun story, even if without the missing parts it does seem a little disjointed at this point. There you go, that's my quick little review on the Daleks Master Plan. What do you think of this story so far? Let me know down below in the comments. And until then, see ya.